Hi, welcome to this week's episode of In the Hoods. This week we're going to be talking about Yorkville, which is the last sub-neighborhood of the Upper East Side. For purposes of our discussion, we're going to make Yorkville run from 72nd Street to the south, west to 3rd Avenue, north to 96th Street, and east to the East River. Yorkville is really a residential neighborhood. It is where families live and raise children. It's also an attractive area for lower-priced housing for people coming to New York. I don't know how low the pricing is these days, but you do have some walk-up buildings where you can probably find a little affordability. But the area itself has changed over the years. Early 1800s, it was largely wooded land. It had lots of streams. And prior to that, in the 1700s, it had been a major staging point for General Washington and the defense of New York. Over the years, it evolved. Mid-1800s, the population was largely made up of German and Irish immigrants who were building the Croton Aqueduct, which is New York City's primary source of water to this day. So it was very valuable. Along with these immigrants, you obviously had housing. It was marginal at best, probably, and very little exists to this day. In the early 1800s, when they developed the grid system for New York, by the 1850s, this grid system had been adopted in Yorkville and uptown further. Along with this came the 3rd Avenue L, which was a raised train system, and there was also a tram along 2nd Avenue. So this gave Yorkville access to the rest of downtown New York, which was very valuable for its expansion. It always was an area that attracted German immigrants and Austro-Hungarian immigrants from, Austria, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, countries where they spoke German. I remember growing up on the Upper East Side that it was still prevalently, the East 80s were very German. And you had German restaurants, you had beer halls that lasted into the 1900s. I do not believe it has really lasted much longer. Population moved out of New York and new people moved in. But really the big change in the neighborhood came in the 1950s when the 3rd Avenue L was dismantled. And that caused a real change in the neighborhood. There had been mansions built in the area that were also demolished. And tall apartment housing began to be built. And that's what you find primarily to this day, is apartment housing. Many of these turned into either co-ops with a few condos along the way in the 1980s, but there's still a lot of rental housing in Yorkville, and it tends to be primarily a more affluent area. It's an area that many people want to raise families in. There's some nice parks. Carl Schultz Park, which runs along the East River in the 80s and up to 90th about. You also have Asphalt Green, which is on 90th, 91st Street near the East River, which is a whole athletic complex for residents of the area. You have Gracie Mansion, which is the official house of the New York City mayor. You also have a number of private schools. Chapin School for Girls is in the East 80s near the river. The Brearley School is on East 84th Street, right near the river. You also have Lycée Français, which is, I believe, on 75th Street. You also have a number of Catholic churches which catered to the German and Irish population. But the area remains largely residential. You have small stores, except on East 86th Street, which has big box stores, which has definitely changed the feel of the neighborhood. Generally, it's residential with smaller restaurants, smaller stores. It's quite lovely to live here.